I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to Campfire Talk. This is where we sit around the fire, put our feet up with a cold drink, and let the conversation flow. It's just Chuck, Forrest, Tom, and myself today. We got a couple of interesting things we were chatting about before we started recording here, before we all sat down around the fire. There's a post in the JRG Bigfoot Research Group on Facebook, and Shelly Jones is one of our big supporters. She's really interested in what we do. So she put this picture up and said, you guys will get a kick out of this pic from a video purporting to show Bigfoot coming out of a tree. It was posted by a popular group, and the people actually believe this stuff. It's beyond laughable that people believe this is the real explanation why people eat soap pods. So,
and don't forget the bath salts.
The bath salts. That's right. That's right. As we talked about with Jay. Yeah, I mean, and I saw the group. I can't remember the name of the group. There was some group. I mean, some of this nonsense just gets posted around. I mean, first of all, you can't see it. It's like some kind of a light or something. I have no idea. I mean, it could be any kind of an artifact. I mean, go ahead, Chuck.
What's the difference between Bigfoot?
Wait, what's that, Chuck? His audio is breaking up a little bit.
Some people are even saying that they look like the Predator up in a tree.
Oh, good Lord.
I've heard that before.
Well, isn't that related to the camouflage or something like that, or are they talking about the actual thing? Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well,
would that be where the hair turns blue and green and all that sort of stuff?
Well, it's not the hair. There was actually there was a sighting, apparently by a physicist or his wife, actually, and she recorded it. So, but it has nothing to do with Bigfoot. And here's the question I have: what's the difference between Bigfoot and UFOs? Well, with Bigfoot, you can get tangible evidence. Okay, you can predict where they're going to be. It's what we've said all along. If you want to have an encounter, you go. There's only three things you have to do. You got to go where they are. You got to know where they are, and then you need to provoke them a little bit to get them to reveal themselves.
Sometimes
UFOs, yeah, sometimes exactly right. What do you do with UFOs? I mean, you can't go out. They don't leave footprints. Well, I guess they leave pod prints and stuff like that. But it's a whole different type of research.
Well,
so
and
the UFO guys,
the Sasquatch is out there. I mean, look, if they were coming out of UFOs, how come they're out there leaving thousands of footprints in the mud and snow and places like that? They're eating animals. We have dozens of witnesses have seen them killing and eating animals. They take a crap. I mean, come on. If they're coming out of UFOs, why are they doing all that? Or if they're, metaphysical, why are they doing all those physical things that all the other animals on the planet do?
Yeah, it's a corporeal creature. And
I know Forrest is waiting to jump in.
So it's...
Go ahead, Forrest. I know you're waiting.
Oh, yeah. I just, I get, me, I just get rather bent when I start hearing people go that way. It's like, sure, little green men are dropping, and I have, you guys know that I actually had a UFO experience up in Canada. So I am not ever doubting that those things, they're out there. But I don't think they have a damn thing to do with Bigfoot. I don't think they're out there dropping Bigfoot on every little mountain and every little prairie and all over the world, to aggravate all of us humans. I think they do enough of that themselves. But, the idea that, that Bigfoot incorporates itself into our our actual world. It's not metaphysical. It's not paranormal. It's not interdimensional. It's not, being pulled up in a light and coming out of light. I just, I have to wonder when I hear all these things that are these people doing drugs or what's going on,
Well, I'll tell you one, some of the people...
Because, none of them on my property, there wasn't a flash of light and all of a sudden there was a Bigfoot there. I mean, that's not how it happened. I mean, they were physical. They were actual physical flesh and blood beings, and they left footprints, and I hear them, and, and you don't see that in the metaphysical and the all this other paranormal crap that people try to promote. And I just got to really wonder about people that go that route.
Well, here's what I think, and tell me if I'm wrong. There are people out there, and there's some obvious ones that are well known. They're trying to make a buck, and when they look at different topics on what'll get them attention, Bigfoot and UFOs are two of the big ones, right? So if you combine them,
right.
Well, geez, you got a double audience. You're going to make more money. You're going to get lots of attention, and I've listened to some of this stuff, and quite honestly, some of these people are windbags that have no information whatsoever, and it's really, I think, a disservice and misleading to people out there. So if you're interested,
and the next thing you know,
if you're interested in the topic, do your homework.
And movies.
What's that?
Let's face it, both of them are cryptids.
After the next thing they do is they're writing a book.
Oh yeah.
On it, and they're doing movies. And then what kills me is that they express themselves as if they are experts on the subject
with zero knowledge or experience in it.
And then yet they've never seen one themselves. And I'm here to tell you that there are no experts on Bigfoot.
No.
None.
And I can
None.
say that having 50 years of experience in
knowledgeable.
it, that I'm not an expert.
Yes. I mean, I'm saying there's a lot of people that are knowledgeable like yourself. But you know what? There just isn't experts in the field.
There's so much yet to learn.
To express yourself and say, oh, I'm an expert, and I'm going to give you lectures out there on podcasts over and over and over and tell you what Bigfoot is, when that's not what Bigfoot is.
Exactly.
So, anyway.
Well, like I said, they have, in almost every case, very little or no experience themselves. The only knowledge they have is from things they've read or maybe people they've talked to, and that's about the extent of it. Or they try to spin this in such a way that makes them look knowledgeable, but really, when you get down to the brass tacks, there is nothing there. There's no substance.
And a lot of what you get is people regurgitating what's on the internet. You hear these same things over and over again, and they don't bring anything new to the table.
No.
Okay, well, I'm going to throw something out there for you guys. Will, you tell me what Bigfoot is.
I can tell you what I think they are. I think.
Okay, thank you. I like that.
I think they're a leftover hominid. From a previous time in history, there's something that's been very hardy and they've survived, where others didn't. But that's my opinion.
Okay.
Here's an interesting follow-up.
Tom, you tell me what you think Bigfoot is.
Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to do a follow-up on that. I'll tell you what I think it is. I have no idea. But
okay.
There's the type 1, type 2, type 3, and then type 4. And Will, you and I have talked about this. Type 4s are so totally different. Well, where would they fall into this?
It's something we've discussed, that there's, lots of things out there that may still be around from a previous point in history. There's a lot of it we don't know. We can guess, we can make intelligent guesses based on information that's come in, but it's a very incomplete picture yet.
Right.
Okay, Chuck, you tell me what you think Bigfoot is.
That's a hard question to answer.
No, come on, you throw it out there.
I feel like that they're some kind of primate. I think they've been around for thousands of years. I mean, we've got pottery shards that show them, and I think that I just think they're an undiscovered or an old primate that still exists. That, like Will said, they have been able to adapt to the different time periods of the Earth, and they've adapted, and that's pretty much what I think they are.
Okay, do you think they're human? Do you think they're hominid? Do you think they are purely something in like an animal, like a gorilla?
I think you're blurring lines now,
and if you do, whatever, right? But then you have to have evidence to back it up.
I would say I lean toward the hominid primate is what I lean toward, I think, more than anything else.
Okay, and why is that?
I mean, there's too many characteristics that come forward when you see them or when you're around them that are primate attributes.
Here's something I can throw out to you guys. Look at it this way. Let's visualize two categories, right? On the left side, we have Bigfoot as a terrestrial animal that's been very successful. It's a very old species and has been around a long time. On the right-hand side, we have the Bigfoot/UFO connection. So let's take a look at the left side with just purely the Bigfoot as a terrestrial animal like all other creatures on the planet. The evidence that supports that is you have all the physical attributes that are very similar to other primate species. You have very similar behaviors that are similar to other primates. You have the physical attributes like the physical descriptions, footprints, scat, hair, vocalizations, the things they eat, why they eat those things, what the value is to them, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of physical things that lock them into other animals on the planet. On the other side, with the Bigfoot UFO connection, I just can't see any evidence for that. I mean, I don't know. I'm left kind of with a blank in that side. Can you guys have any ideas on that one?
Well,
I do. What about witnesses that have seen? And I don't think they exist, all right, but have seen the connection with UFOs and Bigfoot, or seen a UFO land and Bigfoot come out.
Well, you're going to have some that will claim
witnesses.
it.
I don't think there are any.
But where's the evidence of it?
What's that?
Mean, yeah, some will claim it. I'm sure of that. That
right.
say that they've seen that. But where's the evidence of it?
And and how credible are these people?
I would suppose. MuFON is a pretty good organization. I saw a documentary on them recently, and they have some very, very good people. Lots of good scientific folks that do their investigations. And I mean, short of asking them, do you have any solid cases where this is connected? I haven't heard of any, but then I haven't asked those folks either. Whereas on the other side, we've got thousands of witnesses that have seen the Sasquatch in very natural conditions, just like any other species out there, with all those physical attributes and attendant evidence that goes along with that. On the other side, I would suppose when you have some kind of landing markings or some kind of physical evidence of a UFO being there and the Sasquatch evidence in conjunction with that.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. MuFON has been around for a long time. MuFON actually, I have a family member who they're retired now, but they work for the FAA, and they basically, if somebody would ask about the FAA and UFOs, they would refer them to get a hold of their local MuFON chapter. So the question I have is, does MuFON have a public knowledge base that you can scan?
I think they do. In this documentary, they talked about their database.
Guys, I'm a member of MuFON.
Okay, so Forrest, can you go in, log into their database, and search for Bigfoot?
Well, I'm sure you could. I've never done that. Never had any reason to do that. So I guess I could do that. What what I find interesting is that I don't think I would necessarily discount people's. I would be skeptical of people's sightings like that, but I have heard way too many people say, "Oh, I saw a UFO and then I saw a Bigfoot," so therefore they correlate the two together, which
Right.
you can't do that. I've seen, A and B, that doesn't always equal up to C. So, the deal is that, maybe, just maybe those little guys in the UFOs are interested in Bigfoot too. There's certainly enough cattle mutilations and stuff like that out there that I find highly suspect with UFOs.
Well,
so why, if they,
I can add something
why
to
would they
that.
not be interested in primate?
I can add something to that, and I'm with you on that.
Okay.
I don't discount the reports. I'm just saying, I'm like you. It's like, well, A plus B doesn't always equal C, in that train of thought. But something Mr. Black told me, and he's told me it a few times, that there are cases where they've gone in, and we won't say who, but they've actually done these cattle mutilations, people, to cover up the Bigfoot activity in a location. So people were focused on UFOs and that, and totally ignoring, any evidence that may be around or reports of Bigfoot encounters.
Well,
So people are doing.
You asked me what some of these cattle mutilation. I think you're totally correct on that. They're trying to cover up something, and I have always wondered if maybe. In fact, I was sitting here. It's strange that we'd even go down this route, because I was sitting here the other day thinking, I need to sit down and talk to my vet and ask, because they had some cattle mutilations. I think, Tom, I sent that to you the other day here in Texas. There was 6 of them.
It was recent,
recently.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a resurgence.
it's been in the
Yeah.
last couple
Texas
of
has had
months.
them for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, but we kind of had a slack period there, and we hadn't been hearing anything about it. And all of a sudden, it's here we go again.
Well, now I'll make a connection for you.
I kind of wonder. let me finish here, and you throw in what you're going to say. What I have always wondered about is the type of tissue that they take seems to be a specific type of tissue, and I just wonder if there is some correlation with mad cow disease. And maybe there's some sort of tracking on that.
Well, here's what I was going to throw in. When I mentioned Mr. Black told me about, the people we won't discuss coming in and doing cattle mutilations to cover up Bigfoot activity. Where are we seeing a lot of Bigfoot activity right now or in the past? Well, since December. It's in Texas. Isn't it interesting, the correlation that we've had all these things coming into us, and then now there's cattle mutilations?
Here's a question for both of you, and that is, going to the cattle mutilations, what about the there's a resurgence here in Oregon as well, Eastern Oregon. The ranchers are seeing this, and so they'll bring in a professor of veterinary medicine, from Oregon State University, and they'll say that the incisions, they cannot duplicate them. They couldn't even do it with a laser. So what are your thoughts on that as being a legitimate?
Well, okay, we can split hairs on that
It
one
couldn't
because
have been done, but we couldn't have been done by human.
Well, we can split hairs on that because, like we talked about your little situation going on right now, Tom. That's something that people would say, "Oh, we can't do," and yet they're doing it with technology. So
that technology has been around for 20 years.
Just because veterinarians would say, "Oh, we don't have the technology," who's to say the government doesn't?
Okay.
Exactly.
I was briefed in the Army in 1980 about things that we had that they still haven't disclosed, with different kinds of weaponry and stuff, and they said it was in stock, waiting for a major conflict, not these things we've been involved in forever, but a really big one, like if we fought the Chinese or the Russians, that's when they'd break these things out. And these things are far ahead of anything that's currently out there. So
when the government
what do they
creates this advanced technology, the government doesn't create it themselves. They have to go to major universities, MIT, Caltech, those sorts of places.
Not necessarily. They employ their own scientists.
Right, but where do those guys? I mean, if they employ their own scientists, I mean, obviously those guys they got to be super brilliant. They had to come from somewhere in.
Well, the military
academia,
recruits those people.
right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Look at the nuclear bomb.
Same with chemical and biological warfare. I remember what the post I was stationed at in Germany had its own chemical and biological. I can't remember what they call it. I
Right.
think they had a lab there, but and you never saw anybody come in or go out. Of course, we were pretty busy doing our own things, but it wasn't something you could just stroll into and talk to people.
Well, yeah. So the nuclear bomb, talking about that for a second, that was 100% academia. The government had to the Army went out, and they had a time trying to recruit top scientists. I mean, they finally got them. Obviously, we developed it, but again, they have to go to universities, go to the academic
Right, but
community.
once the military gets them, of course, they're in uniform at that point. They're under their control, and then they get
Right.
more education.
That's why isn't that why they got the German scientists to come over and help us?
Sure it was. You
Yeah,
bet.
paperclip. Paperclip was
Yeah.
a prime example of, them taking German scientists, and they were Nazis. Of course, a lot of most of those guys, the scientists and stuff, they didn't have anything to do with the destruction of and the warfare, essentially. As far as and me being Jewish, I can appreciate that. They were Nazis in name only, but I mean, what was, and I can't even think of his name, the guy that became the head over NASA. He
Warner
actually
von
said,
Braun.
Yes. And what did he say when they asked him, how was it that the Germans got so far ahead of us in their space race and all this technology that they had created? And what did he say? We got it from them. And the them they were referring to were aliens.
Right. Well, if you read,
I have a
Philip
problem
Corso's
with
book,
that. I have a huge problem with that because that basically undermines human ingenuity, human intellect, and our ability to create our own technology. So whenever I hear,
Wait a minute, Tom. You can't really even say that because, I mean, let's face it. We're all, we know humans are smart, but sometimes humans aren't smart in the same degree as maybe, and we are not as an advanced state. I'm not trying to defend the aliens on this, but in kind of one sense of the word I am, because, okay, the aliens might be a million years ahead of us because they've been around a million years longer than us. So that doesn't necessarily make them smarter, but it means that they
Right.
have developed these things.
No, but
and had longer time
no,
period.
but
to
the part that I take issue with is, for example, I worked in electronics for 100 years, semiconductor fabrication. A lot of people say, "Oh my," because it's magic. If you don't understand it, it seems magical,
Well,
but it really isn't. It is just simply
if-
raw materials engineering.
But you have to go back and look at how the progress with that kind of technology went. It was not going very fast up until
Sure, it was.
Up until it wasn't though. Up until everything was vacuum tubes and things like that until the
Right.
60s. And if you read the book by Colonel Philip Corso, he was in charge of Army research and development in 1960, 61, or 62, that time period. And he said when he took over the office, these guys walked in with this box, and it was supposed to be materials from, the quote-unquote Roswell crash. And he said that all branches of the military got one of those boxes, and all the three-letter agencies. And they were told to figure it out and filter that stuff out through civilian corporations. And that's where things
do
like
the reverse engineering.
That's where things like microchips came from, and fiber
really
optic
struggle
cable
with
and
that.
things like that. Well, who would think of sending light down a glass tube for information? That just popped in out of nowhere. And all that happened very quickly.
Well, like I said, I study electronics. It's if you get brilliant minds.
But you studied what was already placed in there after that stuff came into being.
Well, that's not the point I'm making.
And they were
the
told
point that I'm
to
making
accept
is
that the colleges and everybody came up with that stuff when they
hang
didn't.
on, but you're going a different direction than I'm going. So if you're already studying electronics, okay, or electrophysics or what have you, your mind is going to automatically go towards, well, what else can I do here? Hey, listen, I've got silicon here. I can, It's got physical properties. We can heat it up, we can purify it, and then we can create, we can fabricate microchips. We can fabricate light going down fiber optic tubes. And to me, there's a natural progression of technology going from, vacuum tubes are kind of magical too, okay, at one point.
But you also have to look at the aspect. Here's a colonel who was on Eisenhower's staff saying this stuff.
Right.
What's he got to gain from that? And he's not the only one to say that. Mr. Black has said many of those things, and you've talked to him,
I know. Again, I'm just saying, personally, I don't think we're giving the human race enough credit that we can come up with this stuff ourselves.
Oh, we could, but not so fast.
My opinion is I think you're both right, because you look at Nikola Tesla. Look at the stuff that he invented.
Right.
And
exactly. Tesla's a prime example.
Brilliant example of just intelligence and figuring that stuff out. So I think in the scheme of things, you're both right. That's my opinion.
Well,
Tom,
we're probably not going to
it's
solve it
all
on the
magic
show
to
today.
me.
What's that, Forrest?
I said, it's all magic to me. When I'm trying to figure out my phone, I'm calling Tom. Tom, help! How do I make this damn thing work?
Well, again, I don't think we're not going to answer the question 100% on the show today, but it's an interesting question. It really is. And so I guess that's a shout out to the audience. If there's somebody out there who has some deep inside knowledge on this, shoot us an email, questions@creekdevil.com. If you'd like to come on the show, we'll keep your your identity strictly confidential, and make your case.
People have asked.
So I could be wrong.
People have asked about Mr. Black. He is going to be doing some more recording about a lot of this kind of stuff. In fact, we can ask him those very specific questions. And also, people have asked about Chris in Tennessee, and I've mentioned this a number of times before. Chris had some heart problems. He was in the hospital for a while. He's been on the mend. He will come back on the show, but when he's ready to, he has to be, feel that he's up to doing that. So now some of that we were talking, that whole kind of spiel went on, and we were actually focusing on something else. It was when we were talking about this whole...
We kind of got a little sidetracked there,
yeah,
didn't
this
we?
whole Bigfoot UFO thing. And I can't remember what it was about, whether we have the technology to make those kind of incisions. I think that's a matter of perspective, though. You get somebody that's, maybe a professor of, veterinary medicine might not be familiar with things, let's say, the government has that's capable of doing that. Might look very foreign to them.
Well, I think the government is they have a lot of things. They are in possession of a lot of things that that are far above our grasp of technology as the average person. And we probably won't ever know about them until we get to a situation where we do have warfare.
Yeah, exactly.
And God forbid that should ever happen. But,
yeah, we don't want
I think human nature, well, you know what? Human nature being human nature, I think it's inevitable. I think, let's face it, the history of the world has been nothing but of one people conquering another people. And, that's the way we've gone. And then we wonder why Bigfoot tends to be violent. Let's face it, primates, especially the great apes. We'll let me clarify that. With certain great apes, there seems to be there's something in that genome, I think, that is so close to humans, and I think this is why chimpanzees, of all the other monkeys and apes, chimpanzees are the ones, because they're so closely related to us. Isn't it peculiar? And this is not really a question, it's more of a statement. Isn't it peculiar that chimpanzees and humans are so closely alike in their behavior patterns when it comes to warfare, being vicious, murder, the things that we wonder why humans do these things, and then we see it in chimpanzees. So why should we wonder about another primate and, like Bigfoot, doing the exact same thing?
People always talk about constants in human history. There's really only one constant in at least behavior among humans, among humans as a species, for our entire existence. Different forms of governments come and go, and all these things. There's always change, except warfare. I mean, warfare itself changes, but the fact that we fight each other, that's been the only real constant throughout our entire history.
Well,
it still is.
It still is.
And you see this in chimpanzees. And I think that this might have something to do with some of the behavioral changes in Bigfoot that we've been seeing. And I think, I'm not going to stick my neck out and say that every missing 411 person is the result of a Bigfoot. I wouldn't go that far, but I think some of them are.
I really don't like that term, that missing 411.
Well,
because
they're why I went there,
right.
Because it seems to be a good collect all thing to throw out there. But
unfortunately,
the missing persons that have just disappeared, and then some that have been found under such peculiar circumstances. Mm-hmm. I do think some of them are Bigfoot related. I do,
they are.
I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that they all are.
Well, I can say they were. I can say they are because I'm in contact with the people who deal with that stuff, and I read you guys, some of the information. It's very graphic, but it obviously not all are, but there are some.
Well, and I've seen some of that stuff too, and it is. And it is some of the things that have happened to those people is such a typical way that, like chimpanzees kill their prey. The way they hit them, and I don't think anybody has most people don't really comprehend the power behind a chimpanzee, which is almost 5 times that of a human. Now, you have seen me when I've sent you pictures of with chimpanzees with alopecia. People need to go out there and actually look that up. Look up a chimpanzee with alopecia. That is a hairless chimpanzee. And sometimes I wonder if maybe that's how we became, maybe somewhere buried in our genetics, that's why we are the naked ape, because maybe we have retained some sort of a gene that allowed us to have alopecia. Although we don't look like that,
Well, I tend to think too something, along the lines of Danny Vendramini's book, Them and Us. I don't think, throw Neanderthal out of the equation there and throw out the sexual component. But if you put Bigfoot in this place, then you got a good case for, a species, one preying on the other one nearly to the point of extinction. And then something, snapped in the species, us, that was being preyed on. And then they made a big comeback thinking that we, and you look at fairy tales. We've talked about that before, about how those kind of echoed down through history. Maybe I think those are echoes of the old stories from tens of thousands of years ago that our ancestors told each other about what happened. And that's why we forgot the creatures existed, because, way back then they felt that they exterminated them. And what they did, they drove them into the high country where they didn't have any more, humans that were able to come after them. And now, in the past few hundred years, they've slowly, and if you look at the time frames, in the past 200 years, there's been an increase in sightings. Yes, there's been more people out there, but that's only a component of it. The other part is the creature's behavior, where they're encroaching on humans. And it's because our behavior is backed way off from what we were when we drove them into those high countries. And even there are numerous Native American tribes that talk about them driving them into the higher country, out of the feeding areas.
Well, I think you're entirely correct there.
You know,
I mean,
and I think that's where the warfare
usually
component.
behavior is a res-
Yeah, I think that's where the warfare component
behavior
comes
is-
in with us.
Yeah, behavior is usually a response because of some sort of pressure.
It's a severe
So,
pressure, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my thought anyway.
And you see that.
You know.
You see that in humans too. I mean, you know, so you get pushed to a certain limit, and you're going to turn around and retaliate. So I mean, it's human history, and unfortunately, it's becoming a history amongst the great apes. I mean, we see that with the pressure, environmental pressures that are placed upon the gorillas and the chimpanzees, but it's always the gorilla. The gorillas always just are they'll fight back, but they don't start anything. It's always the chimpanzees that are starting everything. So that's why I say it seems to be something within their genome and our genome, because we are so closely related.
Well, I wonder.
And there's got to be something in there that makes both of us the way that
I wonder
the way that we are.
If at one time their populations were much more dense than they are today, and these creatures were preying on them as well.
Well, I know that the chimpanzees populations have been much greater in the past than what they are now, and the gorillas too. So, I mean, you know that kind of environmental pressures and the pressures that warfare and the human warfare in the area and deforestation and just all the different things that are combined have caused them to move out of their areas and then into the areas with gorillas. And I mean, you've seen the fighting and such. I actually watched a video, and I think I told you all about this, that these male chimps were attacking this gorilla, and granted, they say that a male chimpanzee, the strength is like 5 times that of a male human.
Gorillas 8
but
times.
On the same token, well, actually, they have gone so far as to say it is even as much as 10 or 15 times that of a human. And I mean, those guys, this big silverback was, these male chimps were all over him, and he was just tearing them off and flinging them like 20 feet
like they were
in the
nothing,
air,
yeah.
and like they were, yeah.
It was interesting.
So, I mean,
the feats of strength that people have witnessed with the creatures. There was someone who commented on YouTube last week about Carol should have, a bull mastiff or some kind of a mastiff, a couple of mastiffs, because they're fearless. And I responded saying, well, yes, we used to have a mastiff, and they are fearless, big dogs. However, you get something the size of a Sasquatch, and TW told us, the story about the family in his area that, about they were gardening or whatever, and the mastiff heard something in the nearby woods, went running over to the tree line, and found out too late what it was, and the Sasquatch came out and grabbed the dog, tore the mastiff in half, and threw both halves at the family. A dog, no matter how big or fearless it is, you come up across something that big and powerful, you don't have a chance.
Well, and they're not only
being 2.5.
They're not only big and powerful, but they're so fast and super agile.
They are, and have a bad disposition.
Pack of dogs.
Along with
do,
that,
yes. Forrest, you're talking about how the chimps are very aggressive, right? And all right, here we go. I'm going to throw it out there. Will, should I say it?
Go ahead.
I just texted it to you. Have you ever noticed how Putin looks sort of chimpish, his face? I'm just saying.
Well,
but he's not aggressive.
There are a lot of those, and I've said this before, a lot of those Eastern European people do exhibit that heavier supraorbital ridge across their forehead, and they do exhibit some very primitive hominin features. So that's not to say that they all are that way, but they do exhibit it. No.
You're going to get in trouble, Tom.
But the Russians,
we're all
that's
the story of my life.
But, the Russians have been very warlike in their history. So
I got a question for both of you, though. I want to go back to the you're talking about the different primates. Will, you've mentioned, and I think Forrest, you have too, that there was a time when there was at least 15 different hominids on the planet, and we have physical evidence of these things. It literally, Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, well, I think what it is, what the article, well, there's a couple different articles, but there's one that stated, and I think they now, at least they're saying they know that there were at least 7 that they know of that live simultaneously. And there was another article I read where it was titled Planet of the Apes, and I think it was around 50,000 years ago. They said that the world was just covered with different primate species. And there's
think about it. 50,000 years ago is nothing.
No, and there's only there's so many big gaps in the record now that they have no idea what all existed.
Well, and the thing about it is too, and I think if you remember me talking about the Homo naledi, the site that they found in South Africa, that they had multiple individuals in that cave. He excavated that and was expecting a real.
Uh-oh. Do you guys hear Forrest?
We lost her.
We lost her? Let me check. Yeah, she was having trouble with her phone. Yeah, all right, let me call her back. She probably doesn't even know.
She's probably still talking.
It happens, folks. Calls get dropped sometimes, and
we call it the miracle of modern technology.
Okay, I'm not seeing her. She didn't answer. Let me try again. We might have to text her to let her know, hey, you're off the call. But you're right, she's probably still talking.
Well, what I think is she texted me before the show today, said her phone wasn't charging.
Hi, this is Kay.
Uh-oh.
If this is a friend or an acquaintance, please leave your name and number.
Well, I guess we better text her and let her know that she's not on the call.
Hang on, I'll hop off. I'll give her a quick buzz and see if I can get her.
Well, Chuck, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, with all this stuff.
Well, back to the UFO Bigfoot thing. When I had my show, I had several people come on the show, and I've talked about this several times, and they would talk about how they would be following the trackway, and out in the middle of the field, the tracks would just stop. And of course, their opinion of what happened was there must have been a UFO come through and picked it up, or it went through a portal or whatever. And I found a trackway like that once, and I've talked about this, and I was kind of dumbfounded at first. I was thinking, well, okay, that's kind of odd because there's no more tracks. And when we got down on our hands and knees and started looking at the tracks, we found that they were backstepping in their own tracks.
Yeah, exactly.
And climbing up a tree and then jumping to another tree and then going in this completely different direction. So, I'm not going to say that they jumped in a UFO or they jumped through a portal. And, I'm never going to put myself in a box. But on the other hand, I kind of look at scientific data and research in what I do, and nothing that I have found as long as I've been doing this, nothing have I found that there was a possibility of a UFO landing or a portal. I've never seen a portal. I'm sure they exist from all the witnesses that are out there that say they've seen them. But I've never seen one, and I've never seen a UFO landing with a Bigfoot.
I think what hurts.
I've never seen that.
I think what hurts reports is when something. The person's doing an investigation. They run out of say that we'll use the example of following a line of tracks, and the tracks just stop. And what they do is they come up with a supposition about what happened.
Right.
I don't think you should ever do that. Just follow the facts. If you run out of facts, well, you put it on the back burner, and somewhere down the road, another piece will come along that will answer that question. I've had things sit around for 20 years, and then lo and behold, other situation comes along that's a perfect match to that. Like what you said, you got down and you looked, and you saw what was actually happening with the tracks, what they were doing. But just making a supposition that, oh, well, it must have been a UFO. Well, don't put that in the report because you don't know.
Well, that was my whole point is if you don't have an explanation for it, people jump to legend and lore. It's almost the same thing. And it's like, really? What evidence do you have to show a progression from Bigfoot? There was a guy out there he interviewed some gal who saw Bigfoot run across the road at nighttime, and then it vanished. It's like, really? Oh, that's interesting. So he goes out there in the daytime, and he goes across the exact spot where the Bigfoot ran, and all of a sudden you have like a 10-foot ledge. Oh, okay.
He jumped over the ledge.
He jumped over the ledge. Boom. He went down to this ravine, and he vanished.
Mm-hmm.
And at nighttime and headlights, yeah, I can see that.
Oh, sure.
So it requires a little extra work and a little extra investigation when you get these sorts of reports.
Exactly.
So, Forrest, what were you
going to say?
Forrest, what were you telling us about the cave now?
Geez, guys, if you don't like what I'm saying, you don't have to disconnect me.
Tom, we talked about that.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it was a plot against Forrest. Anyway, are you talking about the cave when I was talking about the Homo naledi that Berger found in South Africa?
Yeah.
Okay. We actually made two discoveries, and I think the other one's Homo salatus or something like that. Don't hold me on the names of those. But anyway, but the Homo naledi were multiple individuals found in a cave, and he turned all these because of the primitive features that they exhibited. He had really suspected that these were something that was very, very primitive, and he was expecting a very ancient age to come back, and they came back, and I'm just off the top of my head, I'm going to say it was 50 to 80,000 years ago. Well, at that point in time, you've got Neanderthalensis and Cro-Magnon man and the Denisovans running around out there, and
along with Homo sapien
regular Homo sapiens, and I think I had started telling you about. I signed up for a lecture series, and they have now found another type of human hominin that's out in Micronesia, and I don't think as of yet they've actually named it, but it was in a cave, and they found a cave that found some bone material of Denisovans and Neanderthals, and they, we're going to find out that there's a lot more Homo species out there than we ever imagined. And it's just, what is it? The island of Lozin, they found another. Everybody's heard about the hobbits, the Homo floresiensis, and the Isle of Flores. And now on this island, which was, at no point in time was this island ever connected to anything out there in Indonesia. And it wasn't even a part of that once a continent there before it was all sunk down.
Right.
And it was just out there, an island all on its own. And they have got these kind of a hobbit-type people, and they're not the same as the Homo floresiensis, but they have given them a name of Homo lozinus.
Well, Tom,
and
Tom, you remember when we had...
there's just a lot of them out there.
When we had Dalian from Indonesia...
Yeah,
and he talked about, and it's funny, there's people in the quote-unquote Bigfoot community who are always, when they want to talk about that part of the world, they want to bring up the orang pendek. And he was very clear.
And that's not it.
He was very clear about that. He says, and there was, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they had a name for the Bigfoot creature there, and it was just like the ones we have here that are massive, and the behaviors, everything was the same. And the orang pendek was certainly not that. That was something entirely different. They didn't even consider it a wild man type creature. So
yeah, exactly. And I thought that was interesting. It's not the orang pendek.
Right.
And here we are, Southeast Asia or the South Pacific, and we've got something exactly like what we have here. And by golly, what else do we have? Oh, we got this little continent called Australia.
Right. That also has two variations.
Thing. Yes. And repeating patterns that are identical to what we get here in North America. So, and then Russia, of course, the Asian continent, same thing.
And Forrest, we talked about that, with the Minnesota Iceman in the northeastern part of the U.S. and southeastern Canada. And I still have to send you those footprints. Yeah, I don't think that's a Bigfoot.
I don't think that's a Bigfoot.
That's something entirely different. It has tracks that are similar. But again, lots of people look at tracks and, to them tracks are tracks, but there are some differences in tracks. And even, John Napier, who was the anthropologist from England, who was on loan to the Smithsonian, talked about that in his book. And he felt there were two distinct categories at that time. I think that was 1970 or so that he wrote his book. But they noted back then that there were two distinct types among the footprints.
Tracks is tracks. Do you guys remember that commercial years ago for chicken nuggets where they go, chicken, parts is parts?
What were you going to say, Chuck?
Well, I was going to say, you look at the Boggy Creek area. Those were three-toed tracks.
Actually,
I've never seen a three-toed track.
Actually, did you know that was, people always say that, but that was a mistake when they made the film.
No, I didn't know that.
That was actually,
I thought I'd seen that.
No, they were actually that was actually five-toed footprints. There was Doug Tarrant, who was a friend of Pierce, went there and helped him do the film. And I don't know if Doug is still with us or not. He was pretty old last time I talked to him, but he was there, and they said that was a mistake when they put that in the film. They talked about, I can't remember the guy who found the prints, and they said it was 3 toes, and it actually wasn't. It was 5 toes.
Yeah, and there's actually a film out now that actually corrected that.
Yeah.
That said that they weren't.
I did not know that.
I think Tom didn't even Pam Pierce talk to us about that when we brought that up.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
God, and all this time I thought he had 3 toes.
Yeah, so anybody listening that's seen The Legend of Boggy Creek, there's a portion in it where they talk about these tracks that were found, and they were saying it was 3 toes. They weren't. They were actually 5 toes.
To have, multiple additional toes, like 6 toes, or even having lost a toe, you do have congenital defects. I don't care what it is.
Oh, yeah.
You see multi-toes, polydactyl cats all the time, and so polydactylism is going to occur in almost in a lot of species, and it does occur in primates sometimes. So for that wouldn't necessarily, I don't think it doesn't denote anything. Sometimes they say with multi-toes that it's an indication of inbreeding. I don't know enough about genetics to say yay or nay on that one, but if a geneticist says that it is, then obviously that must be what it is. But let's face it, they have accidents, I'm sure, out there in the wilderness.
And birth defects too.
We know that, birth defects, and there's going to be tracks that are going to indicate injuries and such as that. I saw a little macaque here that she was born she didn't have any hands, but yet she gets around like nobody's business. She's learned to work on 2 feet all the time, but she feeds and she takes care of herself, and she gets around. So animals have a marvelous way of accommodating themselves in the worst kind of situation.
I think many
more so than people.
Many people out there know about the cripplefoot tracks that were found in Bossburg, Washington, in 1970 by Rene DeHinden and Ivan Marks, and Grover Krantz was there too. And I think it was the left foot that was badly deformed on the outside, and So yeah, I mean, and of course, they found more than 1,000 tracks, and that find. So, it was obviously, it wasn't a fake. It was 1970, so there wasn't a whole lot of people out there doing those kinds of things at that time. So that was a clear indication of a deformity of some kind, whether it was an accident or a birth defect, nobody knows.
Well, is that the one where the toe kind of bends in and it looks like the Himalayan track? Or is that something different?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I've got the cast put in a box somewhere, but it's when you look at the foot, the outside of it and in the middle of the foot, it looks like the bones were broken because there are two places where it sticks out.
It's got a bulge on the outer side of the foot, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like a metatarsal in there was probably crushed, or several of them, and it probably just grew back that way.
Well, see, what you guys don't understand is if it really did get crushed, all they got to do is hop back into the UFO. The flying saucer doctor is going to fix it up, and everything's going to be good.
Yeah. And what was I thinking?
Otherwise, it implies that these things are just mere flesh and blood creatures like all the rest of us.
Well, you know what? That is far more interesting than, I find that far more interesting that they are just flesh and blood than if somebody came up tomorrow and said, "Oh, they really did come up from UFOs." No, I'm sorry. I find the flesh and blood critter a lot more interesting than anything else that could have been created in our imagination.
If it turned out to be a UFO thing, these things come from UFOs, I'm done. I'm moving on to something else.
Okay, so I'm looking at a picture. Going back to the Bosberg print, it was actually the right footprint. And you look at this, it's not just the outer part of the foot that's deformed, but 3 of the 5 toes are in pretty bad shape too. So, and you're right. I mean, if it was, if it was coming out of the UFO, how come it didn't hop back in there and get repaired? And people.
Oh, they have amazing ship's doctors on those things. But
people, people will probably say the support that they say, well, maybe it got injured out there and then went back into the UFO. Then they fixed it after it left all the footprints. Not really buying
that's
that
what happened.
Okay, that's how it happened. That's exactly the scenario.
I mean, the tracks looked like. I mean, and these were 17-inch prints, so it was a big adult. And apparently it was getting around okay, so that means, to me, it means that, that injury, it healed and the creature, continued on and it was moving around just fine by the time these tracks were found.
Well, now, didn't they find those tracks in British Columbia or someplace else at one point?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if they did.
I mean, didn't they find them someplace else, and that's how they were able to figure out it was the same Sasquatch that had roamed that far?
Well, I'm not sure about that one. The only one I know about off the top of my head, and it could be, but I've never seen pictures or casts or anything to support that. I do know about the Patterson Sasquatch that the last time, this is Renee Hinton told me himself, he said they found tracks from that creature in the Oregon California border in 1980. So, and they knew it was the same one because the tracks you can identify tracks to an individual.
Well, yeah, they have distinctive dermal ridges. I mean, just like we do.
Well, it wasn't so much the dermal ridges, it's sometimes the shape and the wear of the foot. I've got, 20 casts sitting here in front of me, and you can tell the individuals apart easily. Well, guys, we're running short of time, so any final thoughts, comments, or anything?
Well, lively
show
discussion
today. I mean, yeah.
We went lots of places today.
We did. We certainly did. But we know, we've come to the conclusion, we don't see the relevancy between UFOs and Bigfoot.
I wanted to mention one thing too. I was looking at different things on for YouTube, and we're on different platforms besides YouTube. But if you're looking at this on YouTube, we could really appreciate you hitting the like button, because that apparently has an effect on the algorithm. We get people commenting that we should have a lot more views. And it would be really helpful, to help us with that if you could hit that like button. Doesn't cost anything.
Free of charge.
Free of charge.
So is the subscribe button.
That's right.
It's
Anything
free of
else,
charge
Tom?
as well. Yes, absolutely. Hit the like and subscribe. You're helping the show out. And if you want to go an extra step, you can do that on YouTube. There's a description, and we have a link to Patreon in there. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. And the other big thing is if you've had an encounter, if you got a question, send us an email, questions@creekdevil.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Chuck, Forrest, anything final?
Well, I'm just gonna throw this out there that if there's anybody out there that can prove to me that that Bigfoot came from outer space and were created by those little green men, please come on the show and explain that one to me.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, we'd like to hear it.
Yeah,
I've never heard anybody explain it, so
how that happened.
I'm
Well, even if it's anecdotal evidence, we'll take it.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I've never heard any explanation of that, so I'd like to hear it.
We won't make fun of you. We might argue with you, but we won't make fun of you.
No, that's what we do in the show. We present, what witnesses have to say. So, all right, folks, that's it for this time around. So join us next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open.